car batteries. People do a lot of wrong when it comes to car batteries. And we got a guest in studio. Who'd you drag in this morning?
That's right. We have Kurt Rock from Kurt's Auto Repair up at 22nd Avenue and Bell Road. Kurt's one of the many great bumper-to-bumper shops that you'll find at bumper-to-bumperradio.com.
Good to be here.
And we're going to have a lot on the menu today, right, Dave?
Well, it's summertime, and probably the most common thing that happens in summertime is your car won't start. If you lived here for any length of time, you're used to getting in your car, it's hot out, go to start the car, nothing happens. And time for a battery. People make a lot of mistakes when it comes to batteries, and I wanted to point out some of the mistakes that people can make.
Well, but sometimes if nothing happens, that's better, because sometimes something happens and the battery blows up. I'd rather have nothing than have that. Doesn't happen very often.
Well, I don't think people realize that batteries do blow up. And Kurt was saying just before the show that he had one blow up in his face.
Yes, I had one blow up in my face at about 10 o'clock at night, and all you see is a big white flash and a lot of burning sensation in your face. So it's kind of good to avoid.
Now, what were you doing that you won't do again?
I should have had my wife change the battery. That would have...
No, probably would have had more success, huh?
Yeah, she might not have arced it out or something. I was just changing a dead battery, putting a new battery in it, and I must have arced the wrench against a metal object, and it blew up.
Well, and that's not a common problem, but I've had a couple batteries blow up. Fortunately, never in my face, but where you just go out and crank the car to start it. You know, maybe the car gets towed in, or they say the battery's no good, or having trouble, and you go out to the parking lot, you walk out with your keys, hit the key, kaboom!
I've never seen one happen. I've had them towed in, and I've
Yeah.
seen a shell of an old battery where it used to be, but never seen it happen.
And then the other thing, that, we'll talk about the proper way to jumpstart a car a little bit later in the show, but you have to be very cautious. You don't want to have any sparks happening near that battery, and you can have a spark, like Kurt said, just working on it if you disconnect the wrong cable first. You don't want to be touching a grounded battery, so you always want to disconnect the negative cable first and install it last. So if you touch the positive and then cause an arc and there's some gases in the fumes in that area, kaboom, you're done. Or even connecting the jumper cables.
Jump-starting cars, less and less do I recommend it. I mean, we used to jump-start cars all the time, but with a modern car and all the electronics on it, it makes me nervous. It might be worth just getting the car towed and get it fixed. And that's the other thing, there's a lot of roadside batteries. So you call up your motor club and you say, hey, my car battery's dead, and they come out and they change it on the side of the road. You don't like that?
I hate that. I'm not going to beat around the bush on that one. No sugarcoating that. I am biting my tongue, Dave, and it's starting to hurt.
Just pinch your leg in your shorts, your pocket right there.
You don't get a good service. I mean, yeah, if it's 1 a.m. and whatever, and you just came out of the ballpark, or you came out and you're stranded and you've got to get somewhere, and that's your only alternative, then that's what your only alternative is. I don't think the people that provide roadside installations of batteries are using what I would consider a quality product, and I don't think that you can do a quality service. Tools are limited. You still have a battery tester. That's similar to what we would have in the shops for the most part, just for the handheld. But if you have to go any further, they're going to be able to identify if your battery's bad and your alternator's working. But if you've got a system draw, they may or may not be testing for that. And then what happens if there's all this acid that needs to be cleaned up? What are they doing? Just doing it right there in the parking lot, leaving a mess in someone else's parking lot or in your driveway?
Well, I'm afraid that the tendency on the side of the road installing a battery is to really shoehorn one in that doesn't necessarily fit.
Well, and I was talking about in the parking lot. Now, I have seen those battery vans on the side of the road installing batteries, and that's quite honestly one of the dumbest things I've ever seen.
You don't beat around the bush, do you?
No.
Well, you're never driving down the road. If you're driving down the road and all of a sudden your battery dies, it's not actually just your battery that's dead. We have an alternator or a charging issue problem. So if you're on the side of the 51 and you're getting a battery installed, chances are you don't just need a battery, you need an alternator or alternator repair.
And again, if you're desperate, might be okay. In the summertime, you're going to run the air conditioner. A modern car has a handful of control modules and computers. It has to run an electric fuel pump. So it's the stopgap to get you. Again, if it's 10 o'clock at night and you've got to drive home 30 minutes, go ahead. But you probably still need to get to a shop. I don't know how many cars we see come in with a brand new battery that got installed on the side of the road in 3 days ago, and now we're fixing the problem today because the battery was just the stopgap. That was the symptom.
Well, the other thing you mentioned was grade of batteries, and Kurt was mentioned before the shows. There's all kinds of grade of batteries, and they're designed to only last so long, and they give these long prorated warranties. This is a 72-month battery, but you ran in a situation years ago where you wanted to warranty a particular brand of battery, but this one was private labeled for another type of business, and they said, two different grades.
Yeah, it was the same manufacturer, but they built them to a different set of specs than they did the battery that I was selling for that manufacturer. And so with that in mind, there's so many variations there. Matt was saying when we were talking earlier, and it made a lot of sense to me, we've noticed that we've had less our battery life seems to have increased, and yet the way they make them doesn't seem to increase. And I think a lot of that's got to do with the shops doing battery checks on every oil service and all that. And I think that's a great observation. We're getting to go to your shop, get your batteries checked with your oil service and stuff. I think that's a far and a cry better than trying to do any of that stuff yourself or all of that and just taking a cheap battery and stuff. I think it's a great service that the shops are providing nowadays.
Yeah, and at some point, and there's even changes in the batteries. They used to be, they call it a 5-year battery or a 6-year battery and a 7-year battery. And that meant a couple different things. One, it was the warranty, 5, 6, or 7 years. But then it was also the quality of the battery. The 5-year battery, and I'll just make up numbers, the 5-year battery had 500 amps. The 6-year battery had 600 amps. The 7-year battery had 700 amps. So typically, the longer the year, technically, the better the battery. But that's not always the case. And battery warranties are changing too, and we can get into that in a little bit.
Well, we've got a board full of phone calls. Let's go with Gus in Queen Creek on a 2006 Kia Sorento. Go ahead, Gus. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hello, guys. How you doing?
Great.
Hey, I've got a Kia Sorento with just hit 100,000 miles. It's been flawless, other than a battery, and that's it. My question is, do these things have a timing chain that needs to be replaced?
I would say that has a timing belt that desperately needs to be replaced.
Okay.
I believe, Kurt, and correct me if I'm wrong, but off the top of my head, I think the Kias are still a 60,000-mile interval.
And I believe they're interference engine on that one, too.
And they are an interference, and you are on borrowed time, big time, if that belt has not been serviced
You guys said interference, and everyone listening has no idea what the heck you're talking about. On your engines, there's interference motors where if the timing belt does fail, we call them valve crashers. The pistons are going to contact the valves, and you're talking major catastrophic repair to your engine. So you absolutely don't want to let the timing belt go bad. It's get it done, be proactive on it versus reactive in a tow truck.
I got you.
Yeah.
And along with that, I might as well change the water pump while I'm at it. And give me a ballpark figure what to expect for that, roughly.
Well, I would tell you, if come into my shop, Virginia Auto Service, Kurt's, probably most of the good shops are going to do, you're not going to replace just the timing belt, and you're not going to replace the timing belt and the water pump. You want to do the timing belt components. So you're going to, basically, if you made it to 100,000 miles, nothing behind there that is a wear item is going to make it to 200,000, more than likely. So you want to replace all the tensioners, which sometimes the tensioners can be confused with the rollers. If it's a bracket, they call it tensioner, but you want the hydraulic or the auto tensioner, all the rollers, the water pump. To me, that's a good time to go ahead and put a thermostat in it if it's right there, upper and lower radiator hose, and do a very thorough and complete service.
Yeah, you might as well just do the cooling system upgrade while you're there.
Radiator cap. You just, again, it's one of those things. You call it one place and maybe you get an estimate or see an advertisement for a timing belt for $4.99. And I always go back to Dave's question. Now how much to do it right? What did you leave out? So to answer your question, and I'll say mine first, Kurt, I don't know what you would charge, but I would probably be assuming it's a V6, and we're going to do outer belts, timing belt, the tensioners, the water pump, the idlers, coolant, radiator cap, probably a thermostat, the whole 9 yards. $1,200.
Yeah, I was thinking 1,000 to 12, and again, like you said, if he don't do all of that, and a tensioner locks up, then at 120,000 miles, he's back to putting a set of heads on, and just like the belt broke in the first place.
Well, we had one, and again, it's us trying to maybe I have this ad from Acme dealership or Acme Auto Repair or whoever it is, and I go, okay, well, we can do it without the tensioner. What happens? Car's back 2 days later. It's not running right. The timing belt skipped a tooth, and I thought, well, maybe the tech just put it on a tooth off. So take it back apart, put it back together. 2 days later, skipped a tooth again. The tensioner was bad. We tried to help and save some of the $100. It ended up costing us, 5 hours of time and her trying to fix it again. So do it right, do it thorough, and be done with it forever.
Great question, Gus. I think a lot of listeners can benefit from that. There's a lot of vehicles with timing belts. Let's go with Sharon in Mesa. Looks like she's breaking in a new car. Go ahead, Sharon. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yeah, I'm actually a landscaper, but I have clients that stay here just for the winter and then they leave. And I have a brand new Chevy Malibu, and I also have a Dodge Caravan that's quite old. My question is, I start him, and the Malibu, he wants me to drive it, but should I be, because it's only got 3,000 miles on the Malibu, the Caravan probably 50. So should I be driving these things at highway speeds or just around the block, or can I just start them up and let them run for a while and shut them down? Belt hoses, I'm not sure what to do right for these little guys.
Now, what year is that Chevy Malibu?
Brand new. It's a 2000. He just bought it. He just bought it and parked it. So
you're not necessarily talking about breaking in a new car as much as you are how should you treat or how should you drive a car that doesn't get driven a lot and
tire wise, or the tire's going to get flat spots on them. I've heard that. I don't, like I said, I'm their landscaper, but I'll drive their little vehicles around.
What do you think, Kurt? What would you do?
I tell people that have cars that set a lot to drive every car at least once a month and run it down to the store and back, and that should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know that flat spots on tires really happen anymore since we got radial tires versus
nylon tires
from the old days.
Yeah.
And real quick, I bumped the button on the phone and I disconnected Sharon. So Sharon, I apologize. I hope you're hearing us now to hear your answers. But one thing that I'll say is, people go out of town and they want to have somebody watch their car for them. They say, just go start it up every week, and they go out and fire it up, let it run for 30 seconds and shut it off. That's bad. That's worse than even starting it.
Yes.
It's very important to get it. If you're going to let it sit, I would say maybe put a couple extra pounds of pressure in the tire. Maybe go 4 or 5 over. Put an additive in the gas tank, like seafoam is a good preservative, or that you see the commercial for Stay-Bil or whatever. The car's really going to be staying a long time. And then when you do get it warmed up, like Kurt said, run it to the grocery store. Go run around, get it to operating temperature, and get it driving.
Well, and I think that was her question exactly, was, starting it up in the driveway just doesn't really do any good. I mean, the intent is there to take care of this car, but
get the engine warmed up, get some heat in the tires, if they do have a propensity to flat, and they're not going to get a flat spot, but they'll get warmed up, get some heat in them.
Right, brand new vehicle like that, maybe you should be driving around town, enjoy it.
Yeah. Roll it for a little bit. Use it up. And then the Caravan, same thing. You just got to drive it a little bit and keep fresh gas in them and keep them heated up.
I thought I was going to learn something from you guys about batteries, and I think I'm more confused than when I started listening to this show. So who are we educating?
Dave, I thought you knew it all already, but
no, I'm here to learn something.
Well, again, everybody said, how long should a battery last? Or, wow, I'm surprised it only lasted 2 years. And in Arizona, from what my experience is that the batteries that we're selling, which I believe are a very quality battery, an AC Delco battery, about 30 months is what they're lasting. And we're prorating. Then you prorate after that. But, anybody, it's like a tire. I can call it an 80,000-mile tire. It's just a little bit of marketing in there.
Everyone knows it's not going 80,000 miles.
It's not going to last 80,000. You can get an 8-year battery. It's not going to last 8 years. So typically 30 months is where we're seeing them start to fail. Kurt, what do you think?
It's been somewhere around the 3-year mark, give or take a little bit, that they're starting to fail now.
And can people make them last longer with maintenance?
Well, absolutely. I mean, just having that dirt and a little bit of corrosion, a little bit of fuzz on top of the terminals and stuff across the battery will actually discharge the battery. It's a surface charge. And that'll shorten the life of the battery, the corrosion, making sure, we talked about belts. Belts and tensioners a couple weeks ago. Not having a properly tensioned belt is going to make the alternator not charge the battery, so it may not last as long. But so it's important to keep them clean. And now the battery manufacturers are even changing. I know AC Delco, they're getting away from prorating batteries. Can you imagine the administrative nightmare of keeping the little tabs, and it's $1.77 a month, and well, the battery is stamped in March, but I didn't buy it till July, so now how do you do it? So they're just getting away from that. They're making them 18 months, 30 months, or 42 months. They're free during those periods, and after that, you just get a new one.
Well, I'm looking on the screen there. We've got a pretty exciting car coming up. Looks like we've got a 77 Trans Am. Patrick from Apache Junction.
Oh, Dave, you didn't go along. We were going to say we got BJ and the Bear on the line. BJ and the Bear looking for some help on the Trans Am, running from Roscoe.
Well, go ahead, Pat. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
I think that was a 78. But
okay. It was fun anyway.
Anyway, yeah, I'm the original owner of a 77 Trans Am. Bought it in Detroit, and fortunately I moved out here in 80, so it didn't rust out. But I am having it totally restored, and if I can borrow your trademark Bumper to Bumper at the present time.
We stole it. Don't tell anyone that.
Oh, okay. So anyway, when I took it off the road, it had 118,000 miles on it. And my question to you, is there an advantage or disadvantage to resetting that odometer back to zero?
Boy, I don't know.
Is it legal?
That's why I called you.
Well,
I have heard that there is you've got original titles, and then you have trash titles or whatever they call it if your car's been totaled.
Well, that's a salvage title. But what I was thinking,
and then you have altered titles. I have heard, so I'm not quite sure. And I was wondering if you happen to know if I reset that to zero, because the car is going to be bumper to bumper quotes. Am I going to have an issue if I do resell the car?
Well, I would check with MVD and see, MVD, DMV, whatever, and see what they have to say.
The other one I would check with would be Dick Speedo. Call those guys up, ask them, see what they know, because they have to be very careful when they alter speedometers or odometers to make sure that everything is above board.
But what I want to go back to now, if you left it at 118,000 or whatever it was, on the title is where you're talking about. You can have a salvage title, which your car is not. Your car is not altered. That's kind of like a sand rail or something like that. But then on your title, there's going to be A box for actual known miles, or C box. That's where if the odometer was changed out, or maybe the car was restored, but it wasn't a salvage, and you can't certify with the mileage, you check the C box to where you don't know. So
I would think the auction people would also have a feel for that.
Send us, see what you can find out. But again, for you and everybody else listening, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you can go to bumper2bumperradio.com. That's bumper, T-O, bumper2bumperradio.com. You can connect with Dave and I there. Send us an email. We'll answer your question while you're there. You can like us on Facebook. You can You can put anything you want up on Facebook. You have show topics, ideas, anything you want to talk about. Facebook is great, or emails. And then don't forget, while you're there, there's a list of all kinds of great repair shops, just like Kurt's, who's in the studio with us today, that can help you with your car. But for that specific question, I just don't know today.
Thanks so much for the call, Patrick. I enjoyed the nostalgia of the 77 Trans Am. Let's go with Steve in Tempe, which is a great town where my shop happens to be, on a 2003 Maxima. Go ahead, Steve. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, guys. I had, last November, I had my alternator replaced. I had coolant dripping on it from a couple hoses, and since then I've had to have it replaced twice again. It's gone out on me. They keep saying it's faulty, alternator. I don't know what else it could be. If something else was causing that to go out.
Well, I would ask, and I'm not asking for the answer, but what quality of alternator are we using? Are we getting one, at the local, auto parts store? Your big box auto parts store, maybe that's not the best one. Maybe you need to increase, go for a higher level of alternator.
Hey, Steve, when they fail, how do they fail? Do they just quit charging altogether, or is it a weak charge that we're getting out of the alternator?
I don't know. I had it done at a place, and they told me that's not rebuilt. It's a brand new alternator. So it's basically, it lasted like 6 months the first time, and then this one just lasted, the last one they did was 2 months.
Well, they have repeated failures like that. There's something else going on. Maybe there's a bad ground on the alternator bracket or something like that. You're in Tempe. You've got Joel Bartko at Arizona Imports.
And he's the Nissan guy, too.
He is the Nissan guru. I would give him a call. He gets all the challenging problems because he's so good at what he does.
Well, I can guarantee you Joel is listening right now, and he'll probably send us a text message and say, "You dummies, it's this."
Right. He'll know off the top of his head where to go with that thing. So,
but yeah, give Arizona Imports a call. Stop in and see him. I'm sure just a quick test is the basic test, but it sounds there's something going on. It's either the common denominator is the alternator. I seriously doubt they're using a brand new alternator. It's possible, but they're usually not available brand new.
I don't know. I don't see 3 out of the box failing without something else going on with the vehicle that's causing that to happen.
Yeah.
So, hey, thanks so much for the call, Steve. Let's see. I'm thinking.
Come on, Dave. Pick one. John in Phoenix has been patiently waiting with the 1999 Chevy Tahoe. John, what can we do for you today?
Okay, about a year ago, the Tahoe is an automatic, of course, and it gave me a real hard shift from first to second, and then another not quite as hard shift into the final gear. I didn't do it for 6-7 months, and then about a week ago, I did it about 5 times during the day when I was driving, and then wouldn't do it the next day. I pulled the stick out, and it smelled. The transmission fluid smelled kind of smoky, kind of burned a little bit. And now today I've driven it all the way out to 75th Avenue and back down on Glendale, driving around. No hard shifts, no hard knocks. What's going on?
Hey, John, I think I know what's going on with your car. On your Tahoe, it's a 4L60 transmission that's in there. And what's happening is that at some point the computer is picking up on a slip from the transmission. And more specifically, it's a slip from the torque converter clutch. That's not a slip that you're ever going to feel. It's a slip that's maybe 50 RPM. It's not nothing you're going to be able to perceive. But the computer is more sensitive than we are. So when it sees that slip from the torque converter clutch, what happens is it sets a P1870 code, and I believe it's not always a check engine light setter, but what it does is the computer boosts the line pressure through the electronic pressure control solenoid, and it's going to shift hard as a rock. The 1-2 shift is going to feel the hardest because that's where the inertia is the greatest, and you have the biggest gear ratio change. Once you're rolling down the road, 3rd, 4th gear, you're going to feel maybe still firm, but not that hard. So when you turn a key off, that comes out of memory, the pressure goes back down to normal until the next time the computer picks up on that slip from the torque converter clutch. So P1870 code, if you catch them soon enough, you can fix the valve body without having to do any major transmission repair. I'm not too concerned about the smell of your fluid at this point because it's hard. What's smoky? I don't think I smell 20 dipsticks a day and got a real good perception on it. It may just be a little bit brown or varnished.
Well, there's something interesting. Dave went to... what was that name of that place? Like Arizona Automotive Core Recycling or something like that. And this big, giant recycling center. We put on remanufactured brake calipers or remanufactured alternators, remanufactured starters, steering racks. So these companies buy all this product from salvage yards and they sort it. But what I'm getting at is, Dave, you stopped in to see me afterwards and you were amazed at what they had done there. But the other thing that you said, you had the guy from ATRA or the transmission people with you from national company.
Right.
And he told me, it's a 4L60. That's common transmission, 4L60. How many variations of a 4L60 transmission are there? Like 30?
There's 50 or 80 of them, and they're just all different variations because that transmission's in a Camaro as well as a Tahoe as well as a
Volvo or BMW.
It's in a lot of vehicles. So they do different things with different valving to make it work different in each car. The factor of fiction for today, since we're talking batteries, is I was down at the auto parts store and I was looking at a battery and they said I needed a 500 cold cranking amp battery for my car. And I said, well, 500 sounds really powerful, but wouldn't 600 or 700 be better for my car? If 5 is good, why not 700? I'm going with the bigger battery. I'm a gearhead. I always go there. What's bigger? What's better? I'm always trying to soup up my blender at home.
Yeah. You got to hook to the 220.
Right? Fact or fiction? More cold cranking amps are better for my car.
I'm going to say, well, there used to be a notion, you hear people say, oh, you got one cold cranking amp per cubic inch of engine. Well, my little 1.8-liter turbo Audi, I think, is only 121 cubic inches, so 121 cold cranking amp isn't going to cut the mustard for me. But, how many cubic inches is a 7.3-liter diesel, Kurt? Like 800? I don't even know.
No, they're around 450.
Okay. So, but fiction.
It's fiction. Long answer. See, I told you he gets long-winded every time. Simple. Yes or no, fact or fiction. What do you got?
It's fiction, but
I want to see what Kurt has to say because I don't believe you.
Well, Matt brought the 7.3 diesel up. They run 2 batteries at 850 each because that's what the engine needs. But so obviously that equation don't work. But the 7, it is absolutely a fiction that you need the more batteries because the manufacturer knows what you're going to need to start that engine, and there's no advantage to go into a higher CCA rating on the battery.
Well, there can actually be a disadvantage going to a higher CCA rating on the battery.
Well, and I think people say we have the 5-year, the 6-year, or the 7-year, and that used to equate to quality. But the 7-year typically has a higher cold cranking amp. But in order to have a higher cold cranking amp, you need more plates in the battery, and the more plates you have, the closer together they are. So over time, the plates in the battery warp a little bit. So the closer they are together, the less margin of error there is for a slight bit of warpage. So it's not always good to go with a bigger battery. Just go with maybe a touch over. If it needs 550 and the one on the shelf is 600, great. 700, but you don't have to go put some monster in there.
Long answer, short fiction.
Whatever.
Well, let's go with John in Phoenix on a 2002 Ford Escort. Go ahead, John. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yes, I have a 2002 Ford Escort. The other night when I got home, my neighbor came up to me and told me my brake lights were still on. So I looked on the bottom of the floorboard. There was a little blue disc that sits there. If I pull up on the brake pedal, the lights go off. But when I don't pull up on them, they stay on all the time.
Yeah, you don't see that a lot, but it sounds like maybe
there's usually a spring that holds that pedal all the way forward.
There's a spring that might bring it back, but then there's also a button or a cushion. So on the brake, what's happening, either when you step on the brake pedal, it depresses a plunger on a brake light switch, or that plunger is normally, say, open, and when you step on the brakes, it's coming away from the switch and closing the circuit. So sometimes you can there's a little button where that plunger rests, and that might be on the brake pedal. Sometimes it's a little rubber pad or a plastic disc, and it falls off. So now there's a 1/4-inch gap, and you can't, it doesn't depress the switch. So it's not a terribly difficult repair, I wouldn't think. Try and look underneath there, see if there's something missing, if there's a piece that fell on the floor, and then maybe go to the parts store and look. If you're mechanically inclined, look at the switch, and buy one, look at it, and compare it, make sure it fits right, it's complete, and plug it in. It's probably the problem.
And before you go ahead and repair or replace the switch, you should disconnect the battery with the negative cable first.
Always.
Anytime you're doing a repair like that. So thanks so much for the call. Let's go with Steve in Phoenix on a 98 Kia Sedona. Go ahead, Steve. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, how you doing? I'm working on my mom's car actually today, and I've been driving for a couple of days. She's out of town. I'm noticing the car's got about 80,000 miles, and if I bumped the tire pressure up to what was recommended because she had them really low, and the ride quality seems to be excessively harsh. Both front and back, and moreover, small, sharp things than big compressions. Now, I was just wondering if it's something as simple as maybe shocks or something, or.
Well, but what pressure did you set the tires, and where did you get the tire pressure number to set it to?
I got it off of the placket inside the door.
Okay.
And it's 35, and I set it there. She had them; they were way down. She just hasn't checked them up on them, but I just noticed every time when I put the tire pressure up, it just seemed to get pretty harsh pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, tire pressures are a bit subjective. You can go up or down a couple pounds when you say, Kurt, to just get your desired ride, how you want the car to feel. But at that point in 98 Kia, I didn't hear how many miles are on the car. 80,000. It probably needs a set of shocks. I mean,
okay.
Recently, Matt, we've had a couple of these in the shop, and on the Kias, the front struts bind. and they ride just like a hardtail Harley.
Yeah, it's pretty sharp. It's pretty aggressive. I mean,
so he may be
both
strut
front
time.
and back, but yeah.
Does it get, the Honda CRVs have a similar problem too?
Yes.
The strut binds up.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say, is it ride smoother as it warms up, or does it get worse as you drive longer?
I wouldn't say a big. If anything, not much of a change, but maybe a little better, but not a lot.